when you have an image in a movie, what you study in a movie is there any metaphorical use that is being made? But the way the significances are drawn out of it are different in the way it's drawn in literature. Are there any symbolic uses that have been used by the director? And the significances that you draw out of the symbolic use of images is different from the symbolic use of words. How that happens, we'll take each of this up when we are dealing with movies. I'll give you an example right away. I can give you one example. There is, and something that is also a topic of discussion for us today. Today, we are going to deal with a new topic, which is representation. Of course, this will be representation with regard to literature and representation with regard to films. We already have some concepts about representation, beginning with the idea of mimesis that comes from ancient Greece. Mimesis as imitation. So this imitation and representation, this is something that we are going to deal with today. This also is important in reference to the use of images, how they are represented, how words are represented from a writer's text to a director's movie. एक rendering को, एक लिखी हुई चीज को कैसे you give it another form, another shape, and convert it into a different art form. This is something we are going to study. Now, I wanted to give you an example of image being metaphoric and an image being symbolic. Let me check what movie I can share with you at this point. I have got HAIDER and Hamlet in here. I'm not sure if you have seen Hamlet. Is the screen visible to you? No. No, so I have to play it in VLCC. VLC. VLCC. हम लोग एक अभी जो मैं मूवी आप लोगों से शेयर कर रही हूँ, इससे हम लोग कोई सीक्वेंस निकाल के देखेंगे.
This act
is what you have to pay attention to. What did he do? He just laid his sword, not his sword, the sword of the king, on his coffin. Did you notice that? अब आपको मुझे बोलना है, इस इमेज में आपको कुछ मेटाफोरिक, कुछ सिंबॉलिक मिला? Is there anything metaphoric or symbolic in laying down of the sword that the way he does? He is the brother of the king. King Hamlet is there in the coffin, laying down of the sword. Is there anything symbolic, metaphoric?
Resurrection.
Resurrection. Well, can you explain that?
क्रॉस लगा मुझे.
Cross. The cross behind this man, brother of the king. Are you talking about that cross?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. अच्छा, थोड़ी देर पहले कुछ और होता है. मैं सिर्फ प्ले करूंगी विदाउट द साउंड्स. ठीक है, फिर से नोटिस करो क्या क्या है. क्या है? किसका सिंबल है ये? So what you saw is brother of King Hamlet was holding the sword. And symbolically, it appeared like the symbol of hmm? Can you think of Dr. Faustus? The symbol was used there. What does this sign represent? What does this sign represent?
Crucifix.
What does this sign represent?
Hilt of sword.
No. If the cross is turned upside down, I didn't know, you guys don't know this. If the cross is turned upside down, it represents Antichrist. इसको हम दज्जाल कहते हैं.
Yes, ma'am. पता थी अभी दिमाग में नहीं आ रहा था.
And this sword, when he held it up like that, it represented the same shape. So this is where a symbol was used, but where did this symbol come out from? From the mind of the director. And this symbol was not there in the original text. The original text in literature was Hamlet by Shakespeare. Shakespeare's text, in fact, Shakespeare's Hamlet does not show you anything about the death of King Hamlet. It begins with Hamlet coming back from his university and meeting his mother and his uncle. The father is already dead. The rest is only told about. It's narrated. It's not shown. But Mel Gibson prefers showing you something that's not there in the text. That's not even there in the text. So there are certain things that are implied in the text, but the director wants to showcase. And there are certain things that are explicit in the text, but the director wants to oversee. There are many such instances that are there in Hamlet original text, but not taken up by Mel Gibson in the adaptation that he makes. समझ आया? इतना समझ आया?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can we now start our lecture representation? Before I move to the next topic, which is again also related with words and images, it's different. अभी हम नहीं जाएंगे. We'll not move beyond words and images yet. But before that, I am reminded of your homework. Tell me quickly. Give me 6 names of adaptations of Macbeth. Quick.
Maqbool by Vishal Bhardwaj.
Yeah, I said. Yeah.
Macbeth.
एक मिनट,
Justin
मकबूल.
Crozier. And Joe Macbeth by Ken Hughes.
Okay, good.
Macbeth by Philip Casson. And
All of
Macbeth
these
by
are
Bella
American?
Tarr. Ken Hughes, British American. Philip Casson was शायद UK वाला. And Bella Tarr, I don't remember Bella Tarr. मैंने इसका लिखा नहीं है. Justin Crozier UK. Maqbool तो Indian. And Throne of Blood, वो तो पता ही है.
Japanese?
और yes. Macbeth by ये क्या है? No, not Macbeth. Joji by Dilesh Pathan or something. I don't. मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा मैंने क्या लिखा है. And Macbeth by Rupert Gold.
And Joji is from?
Dilesh Pathan, Indian. 2021 में बनी, April 2021 में.
Okay, तो हम लोग जब ये करेंगे हम Macbeth 2021 की, इसका नाम Macbeth ही रखा है?
No, ma'am, Joji.
जोजी मूवी का नाम है?
Yes, ma'am.
JOJI?
Yes, ma'am.
Joji 2021. Yeah. Joji 2021 is, yes, adapted from Macbeth. Its initial release was in April 2021.
April 2021.
I can share the screen with you and you can also read with me. This is Joji, 1 hour 53 minutes. Okay, it's originally Malayalam. Now in Hindi. So it's an engineering dropout and the youngest son of a rich family lives with his aspirations of becoming super wealthy. Driven by greed and blind ambitions. अगर आप लोगों को नजर नहीं आ रहा है ना, pinch in करो screen, आपको नजर आ जाएगा. Driven by greed and blind ambition, he decides to execute his plans following an unexpected event in the family, which is maybe again that his mother marries his uncle. And that's why, yeah, it's Indian Malayalam language crime drama, directed by Dilesh Pothan, written by Shyam Pushkaran. So think about an engineering dropout is something that wouldn't have in some Shakespeare could think of. And there are no dropouts in case of the text that you have in your syllabus, The Throne of Blood. There is no dropout. There is nobody coming back from the university in the Macbeth. We are mixing Macbeth and Hamlet, sorry. So an engineering dropout in Macbeth, the Macbeth that Shakespeare has written. In that one, we also have something of an ambition that drives the motive of a man, ambition. And here also it's the ambition, but ambition of a postmodern young man, and that too situated in a different time place, situated in a different time place model. Time or place difference first difference hota hai in creation of adaptation. So that gives the first edge to an adaptation, and this is how you first visit an adaptation. What is the time place difference between the two? We come back to representation now. Good. लेकिन सिर्फ नाम पता होना ही is not enough. You must also know the differences that you have. Now, we come to representation. How are representations different in literature and in film? What you study in representation is basically, like I said, imitation. How do you represent? How do you present? How do you imitate? Imitate a reality. Now this, when a literature, a writer of original literature writer, हम लोग एक ही example लेके सारा समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. A text that all of you must have read, a text that you all have seen adapted into a movie. Can you give me an example?
HAIDER.
हैदर मूवी देखी लेकिन हैमलेट तो नहीं पढ़ी है ना?
Okay.
अच्छा चलो मैं टेक्स्ट का मैं
Harry
बताती
Potter?
हूँ. ओके, सबने पढ़ी है हैरी पॉटर टेक्स्ट एंड हैरी पॉटर मूवी, सबने देखी है? No. I'll tell you about Hamlet. So what both are doing, what Shakespeare is doing in this section, he is also trying to imitate a reality of his own when he writes Hamlet. What he writes in Hamlet is some situation that has taken place in history. There was a man like that in history. This was already written by Seneca. And the name of that text was Hamlet. Story is very close to that of Hamlet. So what is he doing? Imitating something that's already present. And in case of HAIDER, what is Vishal Bhardwaj doing again? Imitating a reality, imitating something that's already there. And now, question is, how do you define reality in all these cases? And also, what comes into the play of representation is another concept, that is perception. Perception means, like we did yesterday, there are more than one mind that come into the play. More than one mind comes into the play in representation and its understanding and its interpretation. This is not just Shakespeare's mind that goes into the play of Hamlet. It's Seneca also in there, then Shakespeare, then people who read Hamlet. So, and then people like you and me who have not just, don't just know Seneca, don't just know Shakespeare, but also know about HAIDER. So we have so many realities to go by in order to understand HAIDER. For understanding, the term we now will use is interpreting it. How do you interpret what is represented to you? So before you came to interpret HAIDER, Shakespeare went and started interpreting Seneca. Okay, interpretation one. And before that, before you started interpreting HAIDER, Vishal Bhardwaj went and started interpreting Shakespeare. Means it's second interpretation. And after Vishal Bhardwaj converted words into an image, it becomes another representation. And because of the change in representation, interpretation changes because perception changes. Perceiving words is different from perceiving images. Can you give me an example where use a simple sentence in perception, just a simple sentence. अच्छा, जो हमने अभी सीन देखा हम वो उसी की एग्जांपल ले लेते हैं. अगर वही चीज शेक्सपियर को लिखनी होती जो मैंने आपको क्रॉस की बात बताई. He will only write what's the name of Hamlet's father? Gertrude marries. What's his name? I can't recall his name. Anyway, uncle of Hamlet. So simply this would be written in, he held the sword upright. लेकिन अब आप इन वर्ड्स को तब देख रहे हो when you already have seen the images. So it's different from converting images into words to converting words into images. ठीक है? तो मैं आपके लिए image I converted into words. It's easier for you to imagine it क्योंकि यहाँ पे आप सबकी interpretation similar हो जाएगी. आप सब एक ही I पे टिक जाओगे. I here will be just one, a constant I. Interpretation will be the same because you already have one signified to go by. You have seen it, so you know what it is. But think about how actually adaptations are made. The words come in first. Now let me write something else for you which hasn't yet been converted into an image for you, and then I'll ask you, how did you imagine it? Come on, who all are in the class? Let me begin with Mehran. Mehran, the words in the text are, she jumped headlong. Create an image for me. Create an image for me for this.
मैम किस चीज का? इसी सेंटेंस का?
आप क्लास में ही थे ना?
मैं बाहर हूँ.
हाँ मतलब अटेंशन क्लास में ही था ना या
बाहर?
वो भी बाहर था. She jumped headlong. If this is supposed to be directed and shown in a movie, how will you picturize this? Anika, would you like to try first?
मुझे दो images आ रही है दिमाग में. पहला, a woman standing on edge of river पे जहाँ पे या pool पे जहाँ पे वो like headlong jump कर रही है.
ठीक है, पहला आप मुझे बताओ, कैमरा अगर इस एंगल पे है, मुझे क्या ड्रॉ करना है आगे?
कैमरा साइड एंगल पे है तो वो
साइड एंगल पे है,
उस स्टैंड पे, हाँ,
वो ऐसे नजर आ रही है,
वो साइड पोज आ रहा है उसका. हाँ,
साइड पोज. ओके, सो द रिवर लुक्स लाइक दिस.
या पूल रखते हैं ना, पूल.
Okay, she is jumping into a pool or she is jumping into a river. So again, look into just one word. She is jumping into a pool, she is jumping into a river. Jumping into what? So there are so many interpretations. Jumping into what? So each time a director comes to adapt it, he has his will, his perception that he will go by and start representing it the way he wants it. Jumping into what? And from what angle will you represent it? Where will the camera position be? Will the camera be here? Will the camera be here? Where will you place the camera is important. Which angle of the scene will you take? So why do we study representation or perception? Because we read literature and film in terms of the creation of words. Creation of words. So when Shakespeare was creating Hamlet, he was creating it out of his world of experiences. जो उसने अपने देखा है, उसी में से recreate करता है. And when Vishal Bhardwaj visits Shakespeare, he was recreating from his own experiences. So his experiences also come into the play when he wants to represent it. Therefore, he is picking out instances from his world. तो कितने worlds एक दूसरे से dialogue में है when you are creating something, recreating something. There is one important writer who writes about this representation. His name is Nelson Goodman. What he says about this kind of representation is that all art is studied under a specific scrutiny, is where you study how it is represented. You are scrutinizing all art if you are studying its representation. He also believes that there is no real world that any of them are presenting. There is no real world that Seneca was trying to present, or Shakespeare was trying to present, or Bhardwaj is, or Mel Gibson was doing. Mel Gibson, another is by Kenneth Branagh. There is no real world which will be a constant against which all other representations are variables. He says, no, there is no real. This is only his idea, Goodman's idea, that there is no constant real world that is being represented in any of the arts. That's the primary subject. And it's not that this real world becomes the primary subject and all other adaptations, all that is created around this world become the secondary manifestations of it. But he says that real world does not exist. Because even if we say Hamlet is the original text, you again find that Hamlet is not the original text. Even that was taken out from the worlds already experienced by Hamlet in Seneca's life. And even Seneca did not write it from his own head. There must have been something that went into his experiences that helped him create Hamlet. So there is no primary original real world. But reality is therefore, he only says that then if there is no single constant real world, then what is reality? Like I said, here, the question of reality gets questioned, becomes pertinent, question of reality. Because he says realities are multiple. For example, she jumped headlong. This is one reality, but it became multiple realities in each one of your heads, the way you perceived it. You took the idea that I gave you and I gave you certain percepts, it's called. I gave you certain percepts. Percepts are, I gave you certain units of understanding. When you took these percepts, you collected these percepts, P1 plus P2 plus P3, and then together you constituted something in your head. These percepts helped you recreate what I said to you. And in that recreation, you also created reality. And even what I was talking about when I was giving you percepts, I was also talking about reality. So for Nelson Goodman, realities are multiple because the worlds that individuals live in and construct are multiple. Because when I said she jumped headlong, आपकी, मेरी, बोलने वाले की, सुनने वाले की, सबकी experiences of jumping and of river and of sea is different. That's what helps you recreate whenever you are listening to something. The percepts given to you will be the same, but what you recreate in your head will never be the same. Because no two people live the same world. No two people live the same world. This is why what somebody is writing in literature cannot be equivalent to what the other person is creating in films. Because the percepts given by the writer, an author of literature, are percepts given are of course constant, the words written in a text. But how that's taken by another person, say Mel Gibson or Kenneth Branagh or Vishal Bhardwaj, will of course be different because they belong to different words. Do you get my point?
Yes, ma'am.
So this reality in the elements of the worlds that you live in are constituted by various objects जो आप अपनी life में observe करते हो. There are various objects. There are various feelings that you know of, that Shakespeare knew of, Kenneth Branagh knows of, and Vishal Bhardwaj knows of. So it cannot be the same. There are various associations also. Like I said, a cross upside down will not be the same for Vishal Bhardwaj and may not be thought about by everyone in the same manner. Maybe nobody gives a religious thought to the percept that was given to you. For example, I did even emphasize kya mila isse sense, kya mila isse sense, but those percepts you could not associate them to Antichrist because the worlds we live in are different. Even though the percepts given to all of us were the same, the object was the same, but you could not associate it the way I could associate it because we live different worlds. And it's also the same about ideas. We live different ideas in our lives. This is why there are different interpretations of any